Hello everyone. Do you like the stories of the FF series? Some of the works have complex stories that are hard to understand, but I love them. In this video, we take a look at the story of the FF series, looking back at the final boss characters of each title. Each boss character has their own objectives and reasons for fighting, and by focusing on them you can greatly improve your understanding of the FF series stories. I will continue in this order. Number 1, the boss characters of each work. Number 2, looking back on the story of the FF series. So, please enjoy the world of the FF series. First, let's take a look at the final boss of the first FF. He is Garland, who can be found in Chaos Shrine, and is the first boss character. He kidnapped Princess Sarah of Cornelia and planned to become King of Cornelia himself. When he saw the Warriors of Light, he realized they were messengers of King Cornelia and challenged them to battle. At this point, Garland is defeated by the Warriors of Light and dies. The Warriors of Light then travel back in time to a world 2,000 years in the past. They are reunited with a man at the Chaos Shrine from 2,000 years ago. The man was Garland, whom the Warriors of Light had defeated in the world 2,000 years later. Garland's goal was to live forever by repeating a time loop between the present and 2,000 years into the past. As many of you who watch this channel may have noticed, the time loop in FF8 can be thought of as an homage to Garland's time loop. The Warriors of Light succeed in breaking the cursed time loop by defeating Chaos in the world 2,000 years ago. Next up is Final Fantasy II. The final boss of this game is the Emperor. His goal is world domination and he is the quintessential villain character of a RPG final boss. FF2 tells the story of the battle between a great power plotting world domination and the protagonists, who are part of the Revolutionary Army. This story setting is thought to have influenced later works such as FF6. The Emperor dies once at this point. By the way, Leon turns to the Empire and fights against Furion, and this story influenced Cecil and Kain in later FF4. The Emperor, who was supposed to be dead, reappears in a different form. It becomes clear that from this point on, the Emperor's goal changes from world domination to world destruction. Incidentally, the ambition to destroy the entire world ties into an important theme of the FF series. I will explain this later in the video, so first let's take a look at the scene where the final boss appears. Incidentally, Ricard's name Highwind has been passed down to other dragoons, such as Kain in FF4, Cid in FF7 and Arania in FF15. There is a connection like this, but that's what's interesting about the FF series. The castle that appears in this scene is called Pandemonium, and similar names appear frequently in subsequent FF games. Next up is the final boss of FF3. A lot has changed since the final boss of FF3, and it signifies a very important theme throughout the series. In FF3, the goal of 4 Warriors of Light is to defeat Xand, who is trying to destroy the world, in order to save the world. This is the scene where the 4 people, who have finally reached Zonda at the end of their journey, fight him. The 4 warriors join forces to defeat Xand. Their goal was accomplished, and it seemed the world would be saved. But, he dies saying, "It's too late, the world will be plunged into darkness." Suddenly, a mysterious entity called the Cloud of Darkness appears. Remember what Cloud of Darkness says here, as it will be an important element. The 4 Warriors of Light are defeated by the overwhelming power of Cloud of Darkness. The 4 resurrected warriors challenge Cloud of Darkness to a rematch. Cloud of Darkness again says that she will return the world to nothingness. This idea of return the world to nothingness is related to a major theme of the FF series. Next, let's look at the final boss of FF4. The source of evil in the story of FF4 is an entity called Xemus. Xemus is one of the Lunarians, just like Fusoya. The Xemus were a race that lived on a planet between Mars and Jupiter, and when that planet was on the brink of extinction, the survivors escaped to the Blue Planet in magical ships. The Blue Planet is the planet where Cecil and his friends live. But, because they were still in the process of evolving, they created another star, the Moon, and went into a long slumber there. But, some of them did not like to sleep, and decided to burn down everything that existed on the blue star and live there themselves. Xemus hated this sleep, so he was sealed away, but during his long sleep he strengthened his own thoughts and used them to control Galbez. Xemus planned to have Galbez gather the crystals to activate the Giant of Babel, and then have the Giant of Babel burn down the entire blue star. In other words, Xemus' goal was to eradicate all living things on the blue planet and relocate his own race. Xemus is defeated by Galbez and Fusoya, but another evil entity is born. The being's name is Xeramus. Xeramus says his hatred will continue until he has annihilated everything. FF3 and FF4 are the works that form the foundation of the series, and both games have one thing in common: a final boss suddenly appears and tries to destroy everything. This idea is carried over into a certain later work, but I will explain that later. When the crystal is used on Xeramus, will reveal his true form. This single-celled organism-like form is Xeramus' true form. In Japan it is mocked as a giant water flea, but I believe that there is a hidden theme of FF in its appearance as well. By the way, this is the scene where the Giant of Babel destroys the Blue Planet. Using this giant, Xemus attempted to wipe out all the inhabitants of the Blue Planet. It can be assumed that the Giant of Babel is a reference to the giant warrior from the Japanese animated film Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. By the way, in the story of Nausicaa, the giant warriors destroyed the world in 7 days. Also, in the story of Nausicaa, the ancients are in a long sleep until they can purify the planet of the radiation that is polluting it. As such, it is clear that FF4 was heavily influenced by the story of Nausicaa. Next, let's look at the final boss of FF5. The final boss of FF5 is a being called Ixdeth. Ixdeth's goal is to obtain the power of nothingness, which is sealed away in the gap between dimensions. He uses the power of nothingness to eliminate those who get in his way, but he doesn't try to return everything to nothingness like Cloud of Darkness from FF3. Ixdeth planned to release the seal on the monsters in the gap between dimensions and create a dark world for the monsters to live in. By the way, Ixdeth's true identity is a tree in the Great Forest of Moor. This is why Exdeath transforms into a tree during the final battle. Upon defeating Exdeath, he becomes consumed by the power of nothingness. Exdeath then transforms and calls himself Neo-Exdeath. It's common in the FF series for the final boss to introduce himself when he takes on his final form. Neo-Exdeath's goal is to wipe out all existence and dimensions, including himself. This is roughly the same as Cloud of Darkness objective in FF3 and Zeramus objective in FF4. As I will explain later, erasing all existence is a major theme of the FF series, so keep that in mind. Next, let's look at the final boss of FF6. The final boss of FF6 is Kefka. He is a general of the Gestalian Empire who seeks world domination, but his initial goal is to harness the magical powers of the Espers and revive the Warring Triad. The soldiers of the Gestalian Empire are given magical powers by a research facility. The head of that facility is Sid. The first magician created by Sid was Kefka. But, there was a technical problem, and although Kefka's magical powers became extraordinary, his mind was broken. In the SNES version, he uses different pronouns and speech patterns depending on the scene, which suggests he has 3 personalities. The fact that he is an android is passed down to characters such as Sephiroth in FF7 and Ramsus in Xenogears, and the fact that he has multiple personalities is passed down to characters such as Cloud in FF7 and Faye in Xenogears, making him a character that has influenced later works. Kefka's ultimate goal, empowered by the Warring Triad, is to destroy everything and create a world of death. His goal is similar to that of the final bosses in previous Final Fantasy series, but whereas the other final bosses were beings that transcended humanity, he is a being created by humans. I think this marks a turning point in the theme of the FF series. I'll also discuss this later in this video. Next up is Sephiroth. He is the final boss of FF7 and is one of the most popular characters in the FF series due to his handsome looks. He was an elite soldier for Shinra Incorporated, the corporation that controls the world of FF7. But, after learning the secret of his birth, he becomes a source of disaster for the planet. Long ago, a being called Genova came to this planet from outer space. Genova are space creatures that travel between stars and absorb the energy of the stars. The people of Cetra fight against Genova to protect their planet, and although they come close to extinction, they win the battle against Genova and seal them deep underground. By the way, it is said that the motif of Genova is the prophecies of Nostradamus and the movie The Thing. Other entities similar to Genova include Lavos from Chrono Trigger and Deus from Xenogears. Sephiroth is a human who was implanted with exhumed Genova cells as a fetus. Sephiroth was planning to use the ultimate dark magic, Meteor, to fall on the star. By doing so, the star would concentrate all of its energy in order to heal the damaged areas, but Sephiroth wanted to absorb it and become a god. I think FF7's Meteor also relates to a major theme of the FF series. The final boss of FF8 is Ultimecia. Her true identity is explained in this video on this channel, so please watch it for more details. To put it simply, her true identity is that Hein, the magician who created humans long ago, has possessed a human woman. The purpose of Ultimecia is a bit complicated, but I'll try to explain it as simply as possible. Her main goal is to compress time. She tried to compress the vast amount of time that connects the past, present, and future, and become a unique being within it. But she has another reason to compress time. This is part of the ending scene. Having lost the battle, Ultimecia is on the verge of death, but a witch cannot die unless she passes on her power to someone else. Ultimecia follows Squall and travels to the time when Squall was a young child, but dies after passing on her powers to Edea, who was present. After this event, Ultimecia is destined to live until the future, lose a battle, come back to this era again, inherit her powers to Edea, and die. In other words, like Garland from FF1, she will die, go back to the past, live again, then die again and go back to the past, repeating this cycle forever. By doing so, Garland hoped to live forever, while Ultimecia hoped to be freed from her fate of having to die. The way to escape that fate was to compress time. Incidentally, right after Ultimecia transforms into her final form, she says, "I am Ultimecia." From this, we learn that her real name is Ultimecia and that Hein is just a name that humans gave her. Next, let's look at FF9. The final boss of FF9 is Necron, but I'll explain Kuja first. He is a member of a species called Genome. The people of Terra are souls without physical bodies, and Genome is an artificial human created by the people of Terra. The people of Terra created the Genome for two reasons. One is to wipe out the other races living on Gaia. The other is to become the body that will receive the souls of the people of Terra when the time comes for them to awaken. Like FF4, FF9's story is heavily influenced by Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Many people may not be familiar with the comic version of Nausicaa, so I'll give a brief explanation of the story. The inhabitants of the world of Nausicaa are artificial humans created by the ancients. Although the ancient people had an excellent civilization, it polluted the world's atmosphere and made it impossible to live. It would take many years for the world's atmosphere to be purified, and in the meantime the ancients decided to sleep in their sleeping devices. But, they feared that while they slept, the world would become uninhabitable due to an infestation of giant insects. So the ancients created a new human race to inhabit while they slept. The newly created human race can live in polluted air, but not in purified air. The ancients' plan was that they would all be wiped out by the time the air around the world was purified, and the ancients would awaken from their slumber. In this way, in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the Nausicaa were created for the convenience of the ancient people, but in FF9, Genome was also created for the convenience of the people of Terra. In terms of being androids, there are similar characters such as Kefka from FF6 and Sephiroth from FF7, but Kuja and Zidane can also be seen as homages to these works. Kuja's goal was to force the people of Terra to acknowledge his power, in reaction to being perceived as a failure. But, when he finds out that he only has a short time left to live, he becomes desperate and decides to destroy the world before he dies. But, after being defeated in battle, and about to die without achieving his ambition, a certain being suddenly came into being. After this lengthy dialogue, Necron appears. As can be seen from Necron's lines, like the other final bosses, Necron suddenly appears with the goal of returning the world to nothingness. Returning the world to nothingness. This is a key word, so remember it. By the way, Necron is called Pepsi Man, who appears suddenly in Japan because of his unique appearance. Let's take a look at FF10 next. First, a quick explanation. FF10 has two worlds. The two worlds are Spira, the real world, and Dream Zanarkand, the dream world. Dream Zanarkand is a dream world created by the people of Zanarkand, a once great civilization, hoping to survive before being wiped out by war. As many people may have noticed, the story of FF10 was heavily influenced by the story of Dragon Quest VI. The final boss of FF10 is a giant creature called Sin. Sin are giant creatures that destroy Spira, but just like Dream Zanarkand, Sin are also beings created by the people of Zanarkand long ago. Sin has no purpose and is purely destructive. This is what sets it apart from other final bosses, and shows that FF10 has a unique story compared to other FF titles. The being that creates Sin is Yevon, who resides within the core of the body. In the ending scene immediately after Yevon's disappearance, all beings created by Yevon, including Sin, disappear. Next up is FF12. For FF12, please check out this video on this channel. FF12 is a story that takes place long before FF Tactics. FF Tactics was released in 1997, but it has a story with a different flavor from previous FF games, and it is a game with many die-hard fans. Therefore, it seems that opinions of FF12 are divided on whether or not you like FF Tactics. The works related to FF Tactics are called the Evil series, but compared to other FF works, they often focus on depicting conflicts between people and between nations. As a result, the story of FF12 is centered around factional conflicts between countries and between humans, making it feel like a history study. The final boss of FF12 is an ordinary human named Vayne. Unlike the final bosses of other FF games, he is not a being that transcends humanity, nor is he an android with superhuman abilities. But, there is someone who can lend him his strength. That's Venet. Venet is one of the Ocuria, a race of gods who created the world. Unlike the gods who are boss characters in other FF games, Venet is not an entity that seeks to destroy humans, but rather fights to free humans from the control of Ocuria. But, Venet is also willing to make sacrifices for his goals, and many have died as a result. Vayne sympathizes with Venet's aspirations and fights alongside to achieve their goals. The story of FF12 ends with the war coming to an end with the defeat of Vayne and Venet, and peace being restored to the world. But, with their goal not being achieved, humans end up allowing the Ocuria to rule. One of the interesting things about FF12 is that the ending of the story may not be a happy one depending on how you interpret it. By the way, I think FF12 was heavily influenced by the movie Star Wars. The Sky Pirate duo of Balthair and Fran is reminiscent of the duo of Han Solo and Chewbacca. Balthair and Ashelia remind me of Han Solo and Princess Leia. Darth Vader, inspired by a Japanese warlord, resembles the armor worn by the Judge Masters. There are other elements in FF12 that are similar to Star Wars, so I think it will be fun to discover them. Let's take a look at FF13 next. FF13 consists of 3 parts. The original FF13, FF13-2, FF13 Lightning Returns. It would take a long time to explain each of these 3 works, so for now I will focus on the last one, Lightning Returns. To give a brief explanation, firstly, in the ending of FF13-2, Etro, the goddess who controls the cycle between the living and the dead, dies. As a result, new life will no longer be born in the world inhabited by the FF13 characters, and the inhabitants will no longer have a lifespan and will be doomed to live for hundreds of years. Afterwards, Lightning, the protagonist of FF13, falls into a long sleep, only to wake up 500 years later. It was Bunivels, the creator god of this world, who woke her from her slumber. Bunivels' objectives were twofold. One of their goals is to end the current world and create a new one. Bunivels commands Lightning to save the souls of the world's inhabitants and collect the Ark, so that those souls can be reborn into new life in the new world. But there was one problem. The problem is that there is no Etro, the goddess who controls the circulation of souls. Bunivels therefore wanted Lightning to take on the role of the new goddess Etro. The act of saving the souls of the people of the world that she was ordered to do was also a part of her training to become Etro, the goddess of the new world. And then the end of the world came. On this day, Lightning realized for the first time that her goals differed from Bunivels'. Lightning believed that all the souls of the world's people should go to the new world while retaining the memories of their dead. But, Bunivels wanted to transform the human souls he took to the new world into innocent beings that would forget their dead, and be free of anger, sadness, etc. The two, with their differing views, end up battling it out. Lightning will win, and the souls of the world's people will be reincarnated into a new world. This is the moment when humans become independent from the gods, which serves as a contrasting ending to FF12. Incidentally, at the end of the FF13 series, it is revealed that this is a story that took place before the birth of Earth. Next up is FF15. The final boss of FF15 is Arden Izunia. Arden was originally a kind-hearted young man, but he eventually began fighting with the goal of destroying the world. Arden is a member of the royal family of Lucas, and was meant to be chosen to be king. But, he used his special royal power to take into his body the insects that cause infections in people, and overused it, which left his body polluted, and the crystal did not choose him to be king. The Lucas royal family persecuted Arden as an unclean person, but his hatred was transmitted to the dark powers that would destroy the planets, and the dark powers chose him to be the destroyer of the planets. Arden is destined to eventually fight Noctis, who is destined to save the planet, and he ends up fighting him in the end. Arden is defeated by Noctis, but Noctis also runs out of power and dies. There are a few important points to keep in mind when understanding the story of FF15. The first point is that the balance between the forces of light and darkness keeps the energy of the star in harmony and allows the star to continue to survive. As FF fans will likely have noticed, this element is one of the themes of the series that has continued since FF3. And in the world of FF15, there is someone who manages the balance between the powers of light and darkness. That is the 6 astral gods to which Bahamut belongs. The 6 astral gods chose Noctis as the representative of light and Arden as the representative of darkness, and pitted the two against each other. In other words, Noctis and Arden are sacrifices so that the planet can live. As some may have noticed, the relationship between the astral gods and humans is similar to the relationship between Ocuria and humans in FF12, and the relationship between the gods and humans in FF13. In FF12, humans were ruled by God until the end, and in FF13, humans became independent from God, but I think FF15 has an ending somewhere in between. Next is the last FF16. The final boss of FF16 is Ultima. FF16 has many similarities with FF Tactics. Incidentally, the final boss of FF Tactics is also named Ultima. FF16 producer Yoshida has stated that he is a fan of Matsuno, the creator of FF Tactics and FF12, and the creator of Evilise. Ultima's goal is to create a new world free of the threat of the Blight. Ultima, like any other living thing, cannot survive in the Deadlands. But, during the long journey to find Valistia, Ultima's body decayed and he was left only in spirit. In order for Ultima to achieve his goal, he needs to activate the perfect life magic spell Raise, but he needs a body strong enough to withstand it. So Ultima created humans. Then, he slept for many years, waiting for one suitable to take his body to appear among the many humans. And Ultima finally learns that Mythos, the one who will become his body, has appeared. That Mythos is Clive, the protagonist of FF16. FF16 is the battle between Ultima and Clive, and also the story of the struggle for survival between creators and humans. By the way, there are other final bosses that are similar to Ultima. One of them is Ultimecia from FF8. The other is Bunivels from FF13. Ultima and these two have things in common, such as being the creators of humans, having been in a long sleep, and being forced to compete for survival with humans. So far, we've looked back at the final bosses of the FF series. Some of you may have noticed that each boss has something in common. I believe that by looking at the similarities between the final bosses of the FF series, we can understand the larger themes of the series. In the second half of the video, we'll look at the characteristics of the final bosses and explore the themes of the FF series. This is just my speculation, but I believe the themes of the FF series began to be developed from FF3. If you listen to the lines in Cloud of Darkness, you'll notice a lot. Let's take another look at her lines. This is Cloud of Darkness line. She describes herself as an entity that returns everything to nothing. Next, let's take a look at part of FF3's ending scene. Let's look at some key points from what we've seen so far. First, cloud of darkness is an entity that reduces everything to nothingness. Second, this world was originally a world of nothingness. Then, at one point, light and darkness were born, and from them stars, earth, water, fire and then life were born. Third, the world is maintained by the harmony of light and darkness, and if either power becomes too strong, it will cause an overflow and the world will return to nothingness. What do these mean? As some of you may have noticed, all of the points I have just mentioned are related to universe. Yes, the FF series can be thought of as a story based on the theme of universe. From here on, I will explain Final Fantasy and universe while incorporating a little bit of astrophysics. I will talk about the beginning of the universe, which is not fiction but actually happened. There is a hypothesis that the universe in which we exist was originally a world of nothingness. In the primitive world, there were no molecules that make up living things, and not even light. In this world of nothingness, a certain great phenomenon occurs. It was a big explosion. This phenomenon is called the Big Bang. The Big Bang is believed to have occurred 13.8 billion years ago. In other words, the universe is believed to have begun approximately 13.8 billion years ago. After the explosion, various phenomena cause chemical reactions, and eventually celestial bodies are born. As stars were formed, heavy elements such as oxygen and iron were born within them. Light-emitting stars were born, bringing light into the universe where there was only darkness. In some parts of space, stars and surrounding gas were attracted to each other by gravity, forming clusters of stars. These are called galaxies. The universe was born from the Big Bang and is still expanding, with various stars and galaxies being born and destroyed repeatedly. The Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, and the Earth in which we live were born through this process. The Milky Way galaxy is thought to have formed about 9 billion years after the Big Bang. By the way, the person who discovered the expansion of the universe was an astronomer named Edwin Hubble. Through astronomical observations, Hubble discovered that wherever you look in the universe, you are moving away from the Milky Way. This means that the universe is expanding, and paradoxically, it means that it was originally tiny. The theory that the universe began with the Big Bang is called the Big Bang Theory, and it is thought that what is being said in this scene at the end of FF3 is the same as the Big Bang Theory. There are many theories about how the universe, which began with the Big Bang, will end. One theory is the Big Crunch. Big Crunch is the theory that the universe will expand to its full extent and then contract back to its original size. There is also a hypothesis called the Big Rip, in which the expanding universe will explode and be destroyed. Many scholars believe that the universe will come to an end. In FF3, Cloud of Darkness symbolizes the end of the universe. Thinking about it that way also explains Zeramus from FF4. Zeramus describes himself as total dark matter and, like the cloud of darkness, seeks to annihilate everything. I think the reason why Zeramus' final form resembles a microorganism is because the first organisms on Earth were single-celled organisms. Zeramus also uses a technique called Big Bang. Furthermore, Zeramus, who appears in FF14, uses a technique called Big Crunch. Ixdeath from FF5 can be said to be a similar character. He uses the power of nothingness to try to return everything, including himself, to nothingness. The same goes for Necron in FF9. The purpose of everyone in this universe is only to perish. Return to nothingness. There is no need to resist. Because that is the wish of all living beings. These are Necron's lines, and as you can see from them, Necron is trying to reduce all existence to nothingness. Incidentally, FF9 was created with the theme of returning to the roots because FF8 was unpopular due to its overly complicated storyline. That's why, like Cloud of Darkness, Zeramus, and Neo Ixdeath, suddenly appears at the end of the story as an entity that brings about the end of the world. Maybe the end of the universe in the real world will come suddenly, just like the final bosses. There is another important point about FF3. Another important point is that there are warriors of light and warriors of darkness. In the world of FF3, when the balance between light and darkness is disturbed and the power of one side becomes too strong, the cloud of darkness appears and attempts to return the world to nothingness. In fact, something similar exists in the real universe. I said that the universe has continued to expand since its birth in the Big Bang, but the universe contains both expanding energy and matter that stops the expansion. There is a theory that it is the balance of these two energies that allows the universe to remain in a harmonious state. The balance of light and darkness in FF may also come from cosmic principles. In particular, the stories of FF3 and FF15 place great emphasis on the balance of light and darkness. I think FF6 was a turning point for the FF series. The reason for this is Kefka. The biggest difference between Kefka and previous final bosses is that he is made from humans. This setting is also carried over to Sephiroth in FF7. The stories of FF6 and FF7 depict the struggle for survival between humans and the beings they have created. There are also stories that depict the opposite battle. It's a struggle for survival between humans and the beings who created them. This includes the stories of FF8, FF13, and FF16. The story of FF12 is similar to this, but since it does not directly depict the battle between humans and Ocuria, we will exclude it here. What both stories have in common is a battle between the creator and created, which I think is heavily influenced by Stanley Kubrick's films. In the second chapter of his masterpiece, 2001: A Space Odyssey, humans and robots they have created fight in a struggle for survival. Having won this battle, humanity is able to reach Jupiter, where the film ends with them becoming an evolved being. This is my interpretation, but I think it is depicting that the evolution of living things in the universe occurs through the struggle for survival. After Kubrick's death, a film called AI was made based on a project he left behind. The film contains symbolic scenes of humans persecuting androids. At the end of the film, the androids are shown surviving on an Earth where humans have been wiped out, and worship their human creators as gods. Through these two films, Kubrick satirically depicts the relationship between creator and created. What Kubrick depicted in these two films has had a major influence on the FF series. In FF13, after defeating the creator god, the characters are reborn on Earth, and the struggle for survival with the creator god seems to be depicted as the law of the universe. There is one more point I would like to explain. It's the meteor that Sephiroth tried to drop into the planet in FF7. The method that Sephiroth used to destroy humans, its rival in the race for survival, was to drop a meteorite on them, and this is an important element that connects the FF series to universe. As many people probably know, the most likely cause of the extinction of the dinosaurs from Earth is a meteorite. Dinosaurs were once the most powerful and successful species on Earth, but a meteorite changed the Earth's ecosystem. Many people may find it hard to imagine what this means, so I will explain what happened when the meteorite fell to Earth. About 66 million years ago, a huge meteorite came close. It is over 10 kilometers in diameter, larger than Mount Everest, and so huge that it reaches from sea level to the atmosphere. It took just about 2 seconds for the asteroid to pass through the stratosphere and crash into space. It entered the atmosphere at a speed nearly 60 times faster than the speed of sound. When the asteroid struck Earth, it released a burst of energy equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons. The falling asteroid was destroyed on impact. A flash lit up the sky and an eerie white sphere spread out over what is now the Gulf of Mexico. Temperatures of tens of thousands of degrees caused the bedrock to melt and turn into boiling hot plasma. The heat radiation spread with incredible speed, instantly burning everything within a 1,500 kilometers radius. The impact site dug a large hole deep into the Earth's crust, creating a hole about 25 kilometers deep and 100 kilometers wide. At the same time, the ocean was pushed out over hundreds of kilometers. The impact blasted huge amounts of material high into the atmosphere and even into space. A few minutes after the impact, a massive earthquake will occur around the world. It was estimated to have been a major earthquake of magnitude 11 or higher, making it a disaster of global proportions. A huge lava field erupted in what is now India for 30,000 years, covering half of the Indian subcontinent with lava. The explosion created a shock wave of over 1,000 kilometers per hour, blowing everything in the Midwestern United States to pieces and sending it flying thousands of kilometers away. At the point where it falls, the pushed-out seawater returns to its original place. Thousands of kilometers of coastline surrounding the impact site were submerged. A large amount of debris was also released into space. Most of the debris fell to the ground immediately. As the debris entered the atmosphere, it heated up to several hundred degrees. This is thought to have caused the Earth's atmosphere to heat up by hundreds or thousands of degrees, making the whole world as hot as the inside of an oven. The debris is also thought to have sparked wildfires around the world. These phenomena caused hellish heat on Earth. It is believed that most life on Earth was wiped out within a day of the asteroid's impact. After that, ash, rubble, and burnt remains covered the ground, the skies were dark and cold, and only fungi were able to thrive. The ice age that followed lasted for decades and is said to have wiped out 75% of the species on Earth. The Earth has turned into a dead planet. Then, from the ashes, surviving creatures emerged. These were the descendants of dinosaurs, such as birds and mammals. After that, the Earth changed into the Earth we live on today, but without the sudden extinction of the dinosaurs and fundamental changes to the ecosystem, we might not exist. What do you think after watching this video so far? Many people know that the dinosaurs became extinct due to an asteroid impact, but I think many people's image of this phenomenon has changed after learning more about what happened. Also, the story in FF7 where Sephiroth tries to bring down a meteor from the star will have a different impression if you know about the asteroid collision 66 million years ago. Although it's different from the FF series, I believe Chrono Trigger's Lavos is also modeled after an asteroid that once fell to Earth. In Chrono Trigger, Lavos arrives from space 65 million years ago, but the setting is closer to 66 million years ago when the asteroid fell to Earth. There is also a hypothesis in astrophysics called multiverse theory. Multiverse theory is the idea that the universe branches out and exists in multiple dimensions. I won't go into the details of why this hypothesis exists, but just know that there are astrophysicists who propose this hypothesis. Multiverse theory is used in the story of FF7 Rebirth. FF7 Rebirth exists in multiple worlds, including the world of the original story and the world in which Aerith and Zack survive. If we think about it that way, it also makes sense that the scene where Cloud and Zack work together to fight Sephiroth takes place in outer space. The reason why the stories in the FF series are becoming more complicated may be because scientific advances are gradually leading to new discoveries about the universe. Additionally, many of the final bosses and related characters in the FF series come from outer space. In FF4, these characters include Cecil, Galbez, Fusoya, and Zemuse. In FF7, this corresponds to Genova. There is also a hypothesis that FF7 is a story that takes place after the people of FF10 have moved to another planet. In FF8, this would be Ultimecia. Ultimecia, like the characters in FF4, is from the moon. FF13 ends with the characters being reborn on Earth, meaning the story takes place on another planet. So, when you consider that the FF stories are universe-themed, a lot of this makes sense. When I was a child, would wonder why someone would say something so childish as returning the world to nothingness, but when I think about it as the truth of the universe, it seems both scary and romantic. If you ever look up at the night sky, I think it would be fun to look up at the stars and think about the stories of the FF series. Well, that's the end of this video. If you found this video interesting, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.